Hello, and welcome to General Club Officer Training. This lecture is for people who have just been elected as an officer and what that means to themselves and the club, independent of what role they've been elected to serve. When you become an officer, you have taken on a leadership role in the club, and this lecture will be talking about what that leadership role looks like. My name is Greg Stockton. I'm a DTM. My email is very complicated. It's gregstockton.toastmasters@gmail.com. I'm an 8-year Toastmaster, a DTM. I've been an area director and a division director, and I'm a member of 3 clubs. One is in District 100. It's an online club tuned to role-playing games, and I'm a member of 2 clubs at Ford where I'm an IT supervisor. As a supervisor, a many time officer, a area director, and a division director, I am someone who's put a lot of time into thinking about what it means to be a leader, what it means to be a senior member of a club, what it means to be a mentor for people who are just coming up. And today's class will be talking about my insights on those subjects. This presentation will be made available. If there isn't a generic way to do it, please just use my email, again, gregstockton.toastmasters@gmail.com, and I will get you a copy of it. So don't worry about scribbling notes furiously. I'm going to go through 4 main areas during this lecture. I will be doing an overview of being an officer, generic officer duties independent of your role, some thoughts on what it means to work with others, and a few miscellaneous best practices that I've picked up over the years. First question, why should I be a Toastmaster officer? Well, it offers a lot of opportunity for skill growth. It takes you from being a member with their own goals and objectives to being somebody who is working with others more actively, mentoring other people. And I'll get into that much later on a different slide. But the fact is, you will be a better leader when you're done than you are today. It gives you an opportunity to work outside your comfort zone and try something new safely. The first time that I was the vice president of PR, I had no idea what I was doing, but I took the role, I learned what it meant, and I developed a PR strategy for the club as best I could. And I made some mistakes along the way, but the fact is I learned a lot in my time doing that. It's your opportunity to give back to the club and make it better. If you've been in Toastmasters for a while and you can feel yourself improving, this is your opportunity to give back and bring that same experience to other people and to work on anything that you have seen that is an opportunity for improvement or even a strength that you'd like to see more of in the club. And finally, the most compelling reason, or at least the written reason, is that you said you would when you took the Toastmaster promise, to serve in my club as an officer when called upon to do so. The fact is, Toastmasters is a club of volunteers, and one of the promises we make is that we will do our part to support this volunteer organization. I mentioned skills on the previous page. District 101 has come up with this wonderful slide that talks about the types of skills that you will gain by being an officer. Just picking Vice President of Public Relations, you will learn about media relations, campaign development, planning, consulting, journalism, publications, advertising and promotion, photography, graphic design, and networking. These things, just in the course of your job, you will need to be doing to some extent. If you've never done them, it's your opportunity to try. All of the roles have these sorts of skill growth from taking on the role. Even the immediate past president has a role because they'll learn about not themselves signing up as a leader, but being a mentor to the next generation of leaders. So think about what skills you would like to build, not where your strengths necessarily are, but where your strengths could be, and look at taking those roles. I've had most of the roles on this page, and I can attest that I've picked up a lot of these skills in the course of doing the job. Now, the key document when you become an officer is the Club Leadership Handbook, number 1310. It was last updated May 2023. If you search for Toastmaster Club Leadership Handbook on Google, if you look on the Toastmaster site, you should find it. You do not need to buy a physical copy. In the past, they would actually mail out copies of the Club Leadership Handbook to all new officers. So I have several of them from the times that I was an officer. Nowadays, it's electronic. I will tell you that I could not find it at the time of this recording, but I do have a link below that'll be in my presentation. But if you look for 1310 Club Leadership Handbook, you will find a copy. And hopefully the Toastmasters website will update and get it out there for free, because as I said, it is a free document and it is something that you should look at because it will give you the same things I'm telling you, but also specific to your own position as a specific officer, which I won't be covering. To be an officer is actually fairly straightforward. You have to be a member in good standing. Beyond that, you have to accept a nomination or self-nominate, and I want to be clear that there is nothing wrong with self-nominating for an officer position. It's simply volunteering for that position. In most clubs, I have not seen that there is a contest, that people self-sort as to who's going to take which roles, and by volunteering, you tend to go to the top of the list. There are clubs where positions will be contested, in which case you will also have to give a 2-minute speech explaining why you want the role and why you think you would do a good job so that you can get the votes. And then you just have to be elected. It's possible in a club with few members that you will be voluntold to take an officer position because they desperately need people, or it's possible that someone will leave, or there's a role that you can just fill, and when you volunteer, they'll basically just say, yep, that's you, and there will be a token vote to put you into that position. But that's all it takes to become an officer, is to state that you're willing to do it and be elected to that position, either through contested or uncontested elections. Once you're an officer, there are a number of things that you should be doing. You will need to participate in the club officer training or Toastmaster Leadership Institute, or TLI, twice a year. This is a training that districts put on to help people who have been elected officers do their roles. It has been shown on multiple occasions that people who attend TLIs or club officer training are better officers as they understand the scope of their roles, can ask questions, and learn from other officers. People who are senior officers often attend these as well and provide their own perspectives, their own lessons, their own struggles and how they overcame them, or get advice from others. So that 4 to 8 hours a year, 4 hours if it's a club officer training and 8 hours if you do TLIs, is time incredibly well spent. You need to participate in your club executive meetings, and this is something where both your role and the fact that you're an officer come together. As a club officer with a specific role, you will be doing report outs about what you've accomplished over the last month, what you hope to accomplish, what problems you've had, and so on. But as a generic officer, you'll be discussing the health of the club, changes you want to make, take votes on new directions, and so on. Those meetings are the heart of leadership for the club. Those meetings tend to be about an hour or two a month. Generically, clubs will say we're going to meet once a month for about an hour. Okay? Some clubs have more to say, are doing more. The clubs are in a growth area or struggling, and they may meet more often. But that's 1 to 2 hours a month. And finally, you have to perform your specific duties and help other officers and the club achieve success. This is 1 to 4 hours a month, depending on your role. The Vice President of Education is probably the busiest role because they have to not only do the paperwork of helping people advance and so on, they also need to address mentoring. They have to make sure the agendas are set up correctly ahead of time before they hand off to the Toastmaster and so on. They might be spending a full hour a week on their jobs. And this is a net. Sometimes people will be busier or less busy. But in general, the busiest officer is spending about an hour a week on that. So when you total all this up, you're talking about maybe 4, 5, maybe 6 hours a month to be an officer. Some people don't have 6 hours, but it's not an overwhelming thing that will take over your life if it's just a thing you're fitting into your free time. So be aware that if you're an officer, you haven't signed up for something that's going to take over. And if you are considering being an officer, the time commitment is not that big. Now I'm going to get to generic officer duties. These are the things that all officers should be doing independent of what role they've been elected to. And I want to say before I get started that I am going to use the acronyms for various things rather than their full names. VPE instead of Vice President of Education, VPM instead of Vice President of Membership, and VPPR instead of Vice President Public Relations. These are generally known acronyms, but I do want to be sensitive that some people don't know them because they're new officers. This is the list of responsibilities, and each of these is going to have its own slide. But as an officer, you will be leading the club. You should have a vision for the club. You should promote the educational program. Most of that's pathways, but there are other aspects to it. Help the club be distinguished. Use Club Central. And participate as a member of the club. No matter whether you're the president of the club or the sergeant at arms, these are all things that you should be doing while you're a member and an officer. So first of all, as an officer, you need to lead the club. First of all, of course, there's the TLI or club officer training. You take it twice a year, you learn your role, you ask questions, and most importantly, you share what you know. If you have specific problems you've run into that you've overcome, if you've noticed patterns in your role, share them. If you learn things at the TLI or the club officer training, bring them back to your club and implement them. My first officer role was as Vice President of Membership, and in that training, I learned a lot about understanding that people are there for a reason. You need to learn those reasons and help them achieve whatever they're there to do. I went back with a membership strategy. I gave a speech on Toastmasters is for you. What do you want to do with it? And our membership became much more engaged as a result because we weren't going after unattainable or ambiguous goals. We were going after their goals. That's me bringing it back. All the club officer training will give you insights, and you can bring that back to the club and potentially turn that into a better experience for everybody, including yourself. The difference between a club officer training and a TLI is that a TLI has training outside of club officer training. This can be guest speakers who are almost always impressive people with impressive resumes. But you also can learn special skills such as a social media strategy, how to design a website. Did you know that there is a tool out there that will help you build a club website? Of course, there's Free Toast Host, but if you want to take it another level past that, there's actually a WordPress plugin for Toastmasters. And you can learn tools such as Zoom, where they'll show you how to be a webmaster, how to be a Zoom master, how to be a communications liaison with your company, etc. These are all things that you might learn at a TLI, and being a member of the Education and Training Committee for District 28, I can tell you that a ton of effort goes into finding the right things to talk about. My most recent class that I taught there at a TLI was contest functionary training. It was a short training that went through what each person needs to do at a contest and how to structure the contest to be successful. That's not part of club officer training. That's what you'd see in a TLI. So I recommend you definitely check out TLIs if your district is offering them, or jump to another district and see what they're offering. You need to attend Club Officer Executive Training Committee meetings, usually about once a month for an hour. Your mileage may vary. But this is your opportunity to take a pause and look at how things are going. One of the things that experienced Toastmasters will know is that time can go by very quickly. I've really been thinking about doing this promotional strategy. Suddenly, it's 7 months later and you haven't even thought about it. What the Club Executive Committee meetings do is you do a report out for your office. You talk about what you want to do, what you've accomplished, what hurdles you've had, what you didn't accomplish that you hoped you had. This is a way of once a month just taking a look at how the club's doing, how you're doing, how your objectives are going, and talking about them, asking for help, celebrating successes, and so on. A Club Executive Committee meeting includes new business. What are the things that have come up that you want to talk about? There are committee reports. Committees is something I'll get into a little more, but committee members and committee leads are people who are taking on a special subject, such as the club contest. Officers don't necessarily run the club contest. It may be someone who took on that role and has formed a contest committee. Those people come in and talk about that at the meetings. And you have your officer reports where you talk about what's occurred, what's gone well, what issues you've had, and as I've said, things that you had hoped to accomplish that you didn't. This is not about being punitive or anything like that. This is simply taking that pause to say, I'm ahead of where I wanted to be. I've gotten the results I want. I can say that I'm having these hurdles. Does anyone have any ideas? Or I'm not getting the work done that I wanted. Can I get some help? And what you'll find is that club officers are there to help each other, independent of their role, and will jump in to help where they can. It's also your opportunity to share any vision you have, share ideas that you've had, chat with the rest of the officer committee, workshop ideas. Say, I've got this thing and I'm not sure. What do you guys think? And people, independent of their role, will be sharing their thoughts about how to take something from conceptual to implementable. You, of course, have your role-specific duties. You'll want to help other officers, and you're ultimately there to help the club achieve success. One of the things that's important to remember is that your duties are going to overlap with those of other offices, especially those of the 3 VPs. But sometimes there are going to be things where different clubs have a slightly different way of doing things. Who opens the meeting? Sometimes it's the Sergeant of Arms, sometimes it's the presiding officer, sometimes it's the president, sometimes it's the Toastmaster. There are official ways you do it, but different clubs do it different ways, And there's nothing wrong with that. So maybe the sergeant at arms calls your meetings to order and hands off to the presiding officer or hands off to the Toastmaster. That's fine. But working through those things is something that you're going to need to do as an officer to make sure that you're working smoothly with the other officers and with the club in general. Regardless of your role, you need to ask for help where you need it. You need to offer help where you can give it. Just because I'm not the VPPR doesn't mean that I'm not an awesome creator of promotional materials. I should offer that up if I have it. All Toastmasters should offer that up. But especially if you are an officer, you should be thinking about what you can do to help other people. By the way, I'm not a great creator of promotional materials. My skills lie elsewhere. The other thing to do is, as an officer, consider mentoring as a senior member. Obviously, you can mentor other members who are new to the club. That's mentoring, that's a little different. But if you've been VP education for 2 years, you probably have insights for the new upcoming VPE when you become the president or take a step off to letting other people take officer roles. So consider sharing your expertise with others. Have a vision for the club. This is something that I encourage whenever I am an officer, whenever I've been an area director or division director, is have a vision. Talk about how that vision is going to be executed and how you're going to know you're making success on your vision. That, by the way, is what I do for work as well. The club success plan is the document for putting that vision. The club success plan can feel like yet another paperwork document. It can feel like busy work. And to be honest, it is a document that you will get out of it what you put into it. So if you go into it thinking, I have a vision, I want to get my vision on paper, I'm going to create this as a living document. I'm going to pull last year's club success plan to understand where they were going. I'm going to adapt for my vision, and I'm going to hand off to the next officer in my position with my vision so that you can have continuity across 3+ years. This gives you a grounding for your vision, and by making it a living document, it creates an up-to-date vision of success. We had hoped to do this with membership. We've shattered our goals. Do we want to keep pushing membership? Do we want to just focus on retention? What do you want to do? Those are things that can go into the club success plan. I recommend at least doing it once a year, early in the officer session. Ideally, you've got a good one from last year. But reviewing it a few times during the year will get you some real benefits beyond the initial filling out of the document. The club success plan includes specific goals for education, membership, PR, and the other roles. If you don't make it a living document, it will become a dead document, something that you filled out and threw on a shelf. The other thing that I've discovered as a best practice, we actually created an Excel document or an online Google Docs document where everybody could comment on it, and then those answers were reconciled. So I'm the VPE, I've got my thoughts for being a VPE, but someone else says, I have a passion around this thing, I think I would like to see this. One of the things that is in my club is we want to gamify the Pathways project a bit, make it more appropriate to the themes of our club. You can, of course, do any lecture, any speech you want for your Pathway speeches, but here are some ideas how you might use these Pathway speeches to promote creative writing, how you might promote them for being a project lead, how you might do them as a member of the project rather than the project lead. Putting that sort of thought into how the Pathways program could be used by specific people gives them incentive to try those things and helps their own development. The other document is Moments of Truth. And fundamentally, the Moments of Truth is, what does your club consider success? And as a tip, the criteria in the Moments of Truth is the same criteria your area director is looking at. Remember that an area director is not there to judge you. They're a general evaluator for your club. And so they're going to talk about, what does it feel like when you show up? What does it feel like when you accomplish something? What does it feel like when things are being stagnant, feeling stagnant? How do you address those? Moments of Truth helps you to do that, to understand what are these touch points and what does your club want to do about them. Different clubs do this different ways. Some clubs actually just take a subject and they put some time in at a meeting to talk about just that aspect. Some clubs have workshops where they pull people aside for a few hours and go through it. Some clubs who are especially new or struggling may take a lot of time to really think through each one. Again, this is a document that is going to be something you get out of it, what you put into it. However you do it, definitely look at it, and at the very, very least, think about what it's asking and what you, as an officer, as a club leader, you would want to do to change some of the things that you think you could be doing better, or really pushing on the strengths of your club. As an officer, you should be promoting the educational program. Now, the big educational program, of course, is Pathways, which is a system of lessons that grow you as a speaker along a themed educational journey. What you need to do as a leader is show that you are participating in Pathways, that you are trying to get the information that Pathways is offering, or combining it with your own experience to learn and grow. Pathways can be about self-discovery and new experiences. Take on those things that you've never done before. I'm a huge fan of level 3 of Pathways because that's where you get all that long list of potential optional projects that frankly are a lot of fun and let me try things I never will have tried before. I do maintain a small blog. When I started my level 3, I took on the blog challenge, but I tried to create my blog entries as a Toastmaster speaker. Those same things, approachability and making things relevant and making things interesting to an outside audience. I tried to take those Toastmaster concepts and put them into my blogs and found that my blog entries got significantly better, even though I had been very happy with what I had done before. It's about taking on bigger projects. As you get into levels 4 and 5, there start being these bigger projects that have lead times, high performance leadership projects, or projects where you do something and you need to get the lessons learned out of it. Those bigger projects, talking about your successes, your challenge, your efforts, doing those speeches about those bigger projects can inspire others to see the value of doing them. And of course, completion. I had this big thing I needed to do, and I finished it. I got my level 4. I finished my HPL. Those are all things that are inspiring to other people. They should be celebrated. They will inspire them to do the same things because they see that they're not the only ones who seem to care about it. Beyond Pathways, though, there are actually several other things that Toastmasters offers on their educational library, as it were. One of them is the Better Speaker, Leadership Excellence, and Successful Club series speeches. These are groups of about 10 possible speeches that you could give on being a better speaker, on being a better leader, or how to make your club more successful. You think mentoring is something that you want to do better, or you want to teach people how to be a mentor when they haven't before? There's an actual book on that that has a prepared slide deck, and if you go in there, use the slide deck, but promote your vision, your experiences, your best practices, it will be really compelling for those listening. These used to be required as part of the DTM journey. Now under Pathways, they're not, but they need to be remembered because they actually have some really good advice. Now I will point out, the lectures come in a form of auto advancing slides that build out and so on. The first thing I do is I save them as a PPTX file, the just generic PowerPoint, and turn off the slide builds because I don't want them. There are also slides that I don't feel fit into my way of presenting the material. I will throw out those slides. I will put my own new slides. This is all perfectly okay. What you're trying to do is get an idea across to the other members. That said, what Toastmaster provides really gives you some good insights, but feel free to make it your own. Another thing that Toastmasters offers is a resource library, and it is vast. It covers all kinds of special topics that aren't covered in Pathways and they aren't covered in the Better Leadership Successful Club series. As an example for this talk, I went and looked up I'm Afraid to Speak. And I found that there was a book, Controlling Your Fear, available. I found that there is a video called Lose the Fear, Learn the Relevance. And that video has pointers to yet more resources. Lots of people join Toastmasters because they're afraid to speak in public. We can tell them this is a safe environment. We can mentor them. We can help them get through. But the fact is, Toastmasters offers an entire swag of resources specifically to help them overcome fear, or become a more humorous speaker, or be good at specific types of speeches. All of them are freely available in this resource library. And you can go to the Toastmaster site to look for them, or go online and search. I will also point out that unofficially, there's a lot of districts that create resources as well. And so maybe you'll find that the District 67 area will have done a whole series on evaluation. That will be wonderful in the rest of the evaluation resources available from Toastmasters. There's tons of YouTube videos. Some of them are official, some of them aren't. Be aware that all those things are available. So if someone has a specific issue, you have the opportunity to make it better by helping them find the resources to address that problem or that opportunity for growth. And finally, there's the Toastmaster magazine. In the past, this was a magazine that was mailed to you every month. They have success stories. They have specific topics. They actually had an article on how to overcome fear of speaking. It's worth going through them. They're no longer mailed to you. They're only online. But the fact is, now that they're online, Toastmasters is making them freely available. You can send links to people even if they aren't members. I have this big presentation and I'm terrified about it. Oh, I've got this thing on giving the big presentation and not being terrified about it from Toastmaster magazine. If somebody gets that, they may say, wow, Toastmasters really helped me, and that will make them potentially realize that Toastmasters can help them in other ways. These 4 sets of resources are all there as part of the Toastmasters extended educational program. And as an officer, you owe it to yourself and others to just be aware of what's out there and try to make use of it. The next point is helping the club be distinguished. And I want to make a qualifier here. Being distinguished is a nice feather in your cap. I I'm always happy when my clubs are distinguished. But the fact is, the points are really an indicator of a healthy club. And if you think about it that way, helping your club being distinguished is helping your club to be healthy and or thrive. I'm going to go through these, but I'm going to talk about why they're important. The first thing is the educational points. You get DCP points based on educational accomplishments. 4 level 1s. If you have 4 new members, and those 4 new members each give 1 speech every 3 months, they will complete a level 1 by the end of the year. If they're not doing 1 speech every 3 months, they're probably not getting as much out of Toastmasters as they could. That means they're afraid, they're worried of not giving the perfect speech, they're feeling caught up in life, whatever. As an officer, obviously the VPE is responsible for this, their mentors are responsible for this, but as a club officer, encourage people to finish those and celebrate those level 1s. Because that means that they've taken the first step towards their educational goals. If you have 4 people who accomplish level 1s, the next year, those same people can give another 3 speeches or so and get their level 2s, which will get you 2 educational points. So this gives you continuity. The level 1s from last year get the level 2s this year. People continue to grow. 2 level 3s get you an additional point. Those people who got the level 2s last year, some of them are going to keep going. Those level 3s are, as I mentioned, my favorite level because they get into some of the most interesting speeches and projects. And of course, you can get 2 points from level 4, 5, or getting a DTM. These are the people who have gotten past all the initial stuff and they're taking on the big projects. When they accomplish those, 1 level 4 will get you a point. 1 level 5 will get you a point. And of course a DTM will get you a point. So people can feel that they have individually contributed to the club just by doing their own accomplishments and have the pride of finishing their accomplishments. These educational points are all about growing over time. If it takes you 5 years to get 5 levels, so be it. But the fact is, you're making progress at your own pace, but you are making progress. The next 2 points are for getting 4 new members. Toastmasters always has attrition. The most fun, popular, exciting clubs still have people who have to leave. They don't feel it's a fit anymore. They have other things in their lives. That's fine. In general, you get about 1/3 attrition per year in an average club. If you started with 24 people, you'll end up with 16. This growth of members is really offsetting attrition. If you've got a low population club, 8 members, this gets you up to 12 or even 16 members potentially, where you actually have 12 people showing up at the meeting every week. With a 12-person meeting, you can feel that you're really getting an audience, you're really getting feedback, you're really getting a variety of table topics. You have different people taking roles every week. So this 4 new members is about taking your club to the next level if you're low membership, or simply sustaining if you've got a strong club. The last 2 points are administrative, but they're super important. The first, your officers are trained. I mentioned at the beginning, and I'm doing this lecture because club officer training is critical to having successful officers, which is critical to having a successful club. If you get your officers trained in both of the 6-month increments, then you get a DCP point. If you do your membership renewals on time and your officer lists on time, you get another point. Those are freebies as long as you just get the work done. Those 10 points indicate a healthy club that is growing with education. It's sustaining its membership, and it's doing the work it needs to make sure that people are all staying in the club officially. Having people drop out because they forgot to do their membership is a disappointing thing, because sometimes they just choose not to come back. The other aspect of being distinguished is that you have to either have 20 members at the end of the second renewal period, or you have to have +3 net members from wherever you were before. So if you had 8 members, you need to get to 11. If you have 8 new members from those 2 DCP points, but 5 people went away, you still have a net growth of 3. And so that's the other half of being distinguished, is making sure that you have a stable and or growing population depending on how big your club is. This is more administrative. There is a area of the Toastmasters website called Club Central. When you start as an officer and you get into the Toastmasters website, if you scroll down a little bit on that first page after you log in, you will see Club Central. If you get away and try to come back, you'll need to go back to My Home, and then you'll see the page that'll let you get to Club Central. Club Central is where you do all the administration of the club. And I find it invaluable for specific things. I keep going back to them. For club membership section of it, and I've got the screen up here on the right-hand side, you have your club rosters. You have the place that you put in the applications for new members, and you can submit payments if your club isn't doing auto pay. Below, you have club management. The contact for the club. Who do people go to if there's a problem? If they have a question, if they're interested in becoming a member? That contact and meeting information is critical that it be kept up to date. The club officer assignments. I mentioned on the previous page that you have to get your club officer assignments in by a specific date. It means going to this and clicking through and just saying who the new officers are. It takes literally a minute, and it will get you a DCP point. You can schedule events, look at financial, look at what achievements your club has accomplished so far. This is really important for just understanding what's going on in your club. As the Vice President of Education, I am submitting education awards there. I'm looking at how people are doing. I'm looking at who's still active and what do they need to promote their own goals. Finally, in the resources and reports, you have the ability to look at your DCP progress. You can find out if somebody's eligible to be in a contest. And there's administrative reports aplenty that you can look at. I will point out that on the eligibility assistant that there is a flaw in the system, that if you have a level 5 and then start working on a level 1, it will show you as a level 1 and then may show that you're not qualified. So be aware of that. Work with your VPE to make sure that someone is eligible. But this Club Central is something that I consider my frequent landing page as an officer. In one of my clubs this year, I am not an officer because we had enough people taking the higher level roles and enough newer people taking the sergeant at arms and secretary and so on. And so I didn't need to be an officer this time. So I've been on several committees or led a committee, but I don't have access to Club Central for this club. And that annoys me, especially because the club roster is here. And if you want to contact somebody by email, you can just go to the club roster and find their preferred email and send something to them. As an officer, the final duty that you have is to participate. Show that you're there and participate. Do table topics. Give speeches. Take all the roles. Offer to help others the first time they have a role. One of the things that we will do is say, hey, would you like to take an evaluator role? And people will see these DTMs speaking. They'll be completely paranoid about not doing a good job of evaluation. And I say, I will be happy to show you what it means to be an evaluator and what you need to think about. And trust me, that DTM wants to hear what you have to say, because if something's working for you or not working for you, they really want to know that, because they're on their educational journey just as much as you are. But take all the roles. I don't like the timer role. And you know what I do? I take the timer role anyway because it shows that I'm participating. I don't personally like the timer role because I like to listen to the speeches. I love to evaluate. I love to listen for ums and ahs while they're speaking. I love to look at the grammatical turns of phrase, the great things people are saying, and mark those down. Or on the very rare occasions that people say things wrong, I note those as well. I don't like the timer role, but the fact is, I take it because someone needs to do it, and I need to show that I am willing to do it and that I am there to participate in any way I'm needed. The other thing is, many clubs at the end of the meetings have success stories. Bring your success stories. Think about what can you celebrate from the last week, the last couple weeks, whatever, and bring that in. The fact is, we often let our own successes go unheralded, and we need to share those, because a lot of times those successes connect back to the things that are on your own personal objectives for educational growth and can inspire others to not only see that there are successes to be had, but that their own successes are worth celebrating. So just by showing up and participating, you are leading by example. This next section is going to be a few notes on working with other officers. My first point is about support versus overlapping. There are many roles that have gray areas between them. For support, you're looking at what needs to be done and just doing it. You let people know you're doing it, and you just do it. This lets other people see your enthusiasm, see your efforts, and see your accomplishments, and encourages them to do the same. While you're doing things, look for patterns, look for strengths, look for opportunities. What could be better than it is today? And then ask, what can I help with to make that happen? There is a risk of overlap. If you do somebody else's job without letting them know, then you can get into conflicts. That was my job to do. We had an issue where we were doing succession planning. I was the VPE. I was looking for the next VPE. We had a VPM who was looking for who might be a good new VPM, and we were self-selecting ourselves. The immediate past president was a little upset because that was supposed to be their jobs. The fact is, you should always, as an officer, be looking for who might replace you, but the immediate past president is responsible for creating the slate for new officers. The key is work together. Make it clear what you're doing. Make it clear how the jobs synchronize, or make a decision that one person or the other is going to take it. I will tell you that committees are a great way to address this. If instead of people working independently to do succession planning and the IPP doing things independently to come up with a new slate, we'd had a new officer committee where those people met very briefly a few times to talk about what we were trying to accomplish, that would have gotten rid of a lot of that tension from the overlapping roles. Committees often feel bureaucratic. Use them as they're intended, a way to facilitate the delivery of a specific concept, idea, or objective. Now, I want to talk a little bit about synergy, because in addition to overlap, there's a lot of synergy to be had between different roles. The biggest is the VPPR, VPM, and VPE connection. Those three officers are all doing things to promote the growth of the club and the growth of the members. When you are the VPM, one of the things you should be doing is ask people, why did you come here? What are you hoping to accomplish? The VPE is supposed to be asking, what do you hope to accomplish educationally? The VPPR is trying to say, how can I reach out to people to make them realize that we can help with their own goals? Obviously, those three things have a ton of overlap. The key is to embrace it. Maybe the VPPR is going to do something the VPM might have done. Maybe the VPM is going to do something the VPE should have done. That's okay. Make sure you're talking about it, but the fact is, there's plenty of work for everybody in that space, and if people feel that there's a smooth flow and that they as new members have a clear indicator that they are being supported, it's going to be a positive for the club. One of the biggest synergy points is the new member connection. Somebody fills out a form. The VPM is supposed to add that form. The treasurer is supposed to take the payment. The VPE is supposed to get them set up in the educational system pathways. That's 3 steps. I've had clubs where the VPM hands the VPE the form, the VPE fills out the form, works with the new member to fill out their own payment information, and then takes them on to say, let's do pathways right now to figure out what you want to do. Or maybe the treasurer enters the application and does the payment, or clues the new member in about auto pay or whatever. The fact is, those 3 roles have a lot of overlap. As I mentioned before, why are you here in general? What are your educational goals? That is another aspect of overlap. And if those 3 roles, think about how do they want to handle new members and do so seamlessly without stepping on each other's toes, you can get a really positive experience for new members. Committees, as I mentioned, are where you deliver specific goals, strategies, specific events, and so on. One of the most relevant committees is the contest committee, because that contest committee is there to make sure a contest goes well. Yes, the contest chair is responsible for the committee. Yes, the chief judge is responsible for the judging team. Altogether, that can equal 13 people potentially. A committee is there to advertise, to help reach out, to help the chief judge and the member of the committee contest chair to succeed in their roles. Obviously, the chief judge should be the only one who knows who the judges are, but supplying lists of names does not violate anything. Committees can and should generally either be supporting an officer, supporting a theme the club is after, or they should start, do the event, and stop. Depending on which kind of committee, you want to simply get synergy from it, and when it's no longer valuable, shut it down. Something like educational committee might actually be something that goes on for the whole year because you have a bunch of educational objectives and the VPE can't handle it all by themselves. So you make an educational committee. When I was the VPPR, I got this new club and I was supposed to be the VPPR, which I had never done before, and I asked for some help, and I got 6 incredibly talented people to join me. So I got to have a vision, but they got to help me with social media strategies and creating a website and creating promotional materials, none of which I was very good at. I was good at leading the concept, and it was an incredibly successful PR committee, which I then handed off to the new VPPM and stayed on as a committee member when I became the VPE. There's also special skills, and it's important to know that those special skills are going to help everybody. The Zoom master has to know how to set up the meetings, has to make sure that they know how to get club member sign-ons versus guest sign-ons. You have to know how to handle Zoom bombers. During contests, the Zoom master has to know how to set up breakout rooms and get people from one breakout room to another. I am a 30-plus year IT professional. Handling breakout rooms and not having people end up in some sort of a neither here nor there void was beyond me. There are tricks you learn. What are the things in a contest? You don't want to have a judge's room and have everybody be able to see who your judges are. That requires you to set up the breakout rooms in a specific way. Getting a Zoom master who knows that is critical. And with that special skill, it doesn't matter what role they have, they can help any other committee or group or club as a whole to do better. Finding those synergies without overusing those people. If everybody goes to the one person who seems to know how to do promotional materials, there's also a need to make sure that someone else is learning how to do promotional materials so you don't always go to the same person and potentially burn them out. Now I've got a few miscellaneous things. I've called them best practices, but they're sort of miscellaneous things that don't fit in with the rest of my presentation. Have a broader vision. This is something that as an IT supervisor that I encourage people, as a leader I encourage people. As a Toastmasters member, you will have personal goals and you'll want to become a better communicator and a leader. As a Toastmaster officer, you elevate that a level and start thinking about club goals. How can we align these personal goals to do better as a club? You broaden your communication and your leadership from being the roles I do in a meeting to helping groups of people, helping the club as a whole, doing the things that I've talked about during this on how to be a leader in the club independent of your role. Those broader thought, broader communications, broader leadership are all a step up in your thinking, taking you from individual contributor to lead. As a supervisor, this was one of my biggest lessons, was learning how to elevate my own thinking to my department's goals. Another best practice is to remember that life happens. Toastmasters is a volunteer organization. So when you have things you're trying to accomplish, you need to be aware that some people are going to need help when their life happens, or offer support to them, or just say, I understand that you're having trouble. Is there anything I can do? People in general refuse to admit that they are failing, that they're having trouble, that they're struggling. If you simply say, hey, we were supposed to get that done. I see you didn't. That's okay. Life happens. Is there anything I can do to help out? That's not coming across as criticism. That's coming across as caring and an offer of support. And sometimes people are going to say, I just can't do it. Being aware of that and being ready to catch when that sort of thing happens. Not do the work, but simply to be there to catch and say, I understand that. Let me go back to the officers and figure out what we can do about it. The flip side of this, speak out when life happens to you. You have commitments and roles and objectives when you're an officer. And if for whatever reason you're not getting it done, if your life is happening, sick child, sick parent, too much work, whatever. If you're having a massive anxiety spike that's gone on for a few weeks and you're having trouble getting anything done, feel free to tell people, I'm not able to do this right now. I need some help. That is a proactive way of letting people come help. And there should be no judgment in doing so, any more than you would judge people if they came to you with the same question. And encouraging that sort of culture will make the safety of Toastmasters feel that more relevant and honest. I've got down here a summary of those, but I think I've already covered them. I'm going to finish off with one comment about what about district leadership? Being an area director, for example. As an area director, you are in charge of mentoring 3 to 4 other clubs. That mentoring is like being a general evaluator. You're looking for the strengths and you want to call out those strengths, especially if they don't notice that those are strengths for them. Where there are opportunities to do better in the future, you're calling those things out. You're given a list of criteria, but the fact is you're there to help. You're there to support. You are not the boss. You are not being judgmental. You are simply evaluating and working with them to do better. The role of being an area director is about 6 hours a month. About the same as being a member. You have the district executive council meetings. For my district, those are Saturday mornings from 8 to 12. You have to run the area contest, which is a spike in the spring. And you have to do your club visits. That's 2 visits per club per year minimum. And you have to write the reports. The fact is, as you get to know these other clubs, as you see that they do things differently than your club, and maybe some of those things are better, or maybe what you're doing is better, that's an opportunity to have a conversation. Bring back the lessons. You can have a area meeting where you pull the various presidents and vice presidents and whoever wants to show up in and say, hey, this club is doing something cool. Hey, I think we should work together to try to promote membership in the area, whatever it is. At one point, Ford had 4 clubs, and we simply had our own area, and we worked on promoting membership within the Ford Toastmasters ecosystem. We didn't compete. We simply tried to align practices, make it clear that if we were holding a promotional thing, we always mentioned the other clubs, so that people could pick the time and group of people that they wanted to work with. That was something that I shared with other clubs when I started being outside of an area director, outside of the Ford ecosystem. And I started sharing best practices between clubs, had them share their best practices, and had a great time as an area director. If you have been a vice president, you are certainly qualified to be an area director. The vice presidents have a number of important duties to do, and if you can do those duties, you're more than qualified to be the area director. Any officer can be an area director, but certainly if you've been a VP, you have the skills already to do that job. And one of the strangest questions I get are, can I be an area director and a club officer? Absolutely. The first time I was an area director, I was also the president of my club. The two actually are quite synergistic, and as you learn things from an area director, you take it into your club as an officer. As you have challenges as an officer, you take them into your area to try to solve it at a higher level. So fundamentally, as I come to an end, as a member officer, you are a member of the club. You have to remember that you're not just an officer, you are a member of the club. So be a member. Give your speeches. Have your challenges. Share your successes. As an officer, you're also a leader. You want to look at the club and say, what are we doing well? What are we doing well that we want to do more of? Where do we have opportunities? How can I show leadership to my fellow members? As an officer, you're going to work with others. When you go into it with we are a team, we have team objectives, we have team goals, and we have team problems that we solve as a team, you will have an incredibly effective way of helping your club get better. As an officer, you will be changing your perspective. When you are not an officer and you become an officer, you will get a broader vision. You'll see what's going on behind the scenes to make the club successful. But if you shift from Vice President of Membership to VPE, you'll have a completely different take on what's going on in the club. You'll be thinking about things in terms of making sure that the club members are educated versus making sure that those club members have their non-educational goals being met. And fundamentally, as an officer, you are a Toastmaster. You've been learning to be a Toastmaster. You are on a continuous educational goal. And that continuous educational goal includes not only building yourself up, but building others up. Because Toastmasters' tagline, remember, is where leaders are made. Thank you very much for your interest in this class. I hope that you have enjoyed it. Again, if you have any questions or comments, please reach out. Greg Stockton, Toastmasters @gmail.com. I wish you well.